Yeah, I have. During my career, I've had many role models and coaches, mentors, maybe not in a formal sense. I would qualify that by saying I haven't had anybody from the Black community or a person of colour who's stepped into a role model or mentor or coach position. They're short. They're hard to come by in Northern Ireland, or have been. But actually, I remember there's two individuals who stand out. Early in my career, there was one, my first line manager, a lady called Carol. And Carol very much took me under her wing at an early stage in my career, showed me the rules of the game. I think part of it was not because I was from an ethnic minority background, but I think Carol, like me, was from a background where maybe we weren't from the highest socioeconomic status. But I remember in terms of my annual performance report and promotability assessment, there was a line that Carol used. It was, "David has outgrown his current duties and he's fit for promotion." And for me, that was a real uplift. It was real inspiring, really motivational. So Carol, that's one example of how Carol inspired me as a role model. And then later in my career, when I was working for the police ombudsman's office, there was another a chap called Brendan. And again, Brendan, he wasn't assigned as a formal role model or mentor or coach, but just the relationship that we developed over a short period of time and an enduring relationship. He showed me the ropes, took me under his wing, and the relationship blossomed. I say neither of those two individuals were from the ethnic minority background, but for me that didn't matter. It was the relationship that developed, and I'm forever grateful to both those individuals. There have been many more, but those are the two standouts. Personal values. Again, I suppose there's many. But for me, I suppose, again, the standouts are humility. I think humility is really, really important, particularly in the people profession. Empathy, ability to relate to a person's circumstances, where they're coming from, what their experiences have been. I think empathy is also important. Compassion, whether it's through a disciplinary process, or whether it's through a performance appraisal process, you should show compassion. We should be compassionate for the people we're working with. And I think as well, for me, kindness. It costs nothing to be kind. So for me, yes, humility, empathy, compassion, and kindness are the four standouts for me in terms of personal values. I would absolutely encourage other members of the Black community to enter our fabulous people profession. Why? Because it's a fabulous profession. I've been an HR professional for 25 plus years. We don't get the credit often that we deserve as a profession. But yes, so it's a fabulous profession to be in. But also, my own experience is people of colour, persons from the Black community are significantly underrepresented presently in the profession at all grades, particularly at a senior level. And what I would like to see now, I'm at the other end of my career, but certainly for young people entering the profession, I would like to see persons of colour, people from the Black community in middle to senior levels who can act as role models and mentors for the young aspiring people professionals coming up through. For me, that's really, really important because I didn't have it. For me, a truly inclusive workplace is a workplace that goes beyond the counting of characteristics. It's beyond the numbers. For me, it's about making sure that, yes, there's representation at the table, but making sure that the people seated at the table have a voice, that the voice is listened to, and that there's demonstrable outcomes achieved. For me, it's also creating space where we can have what might previously have been uncomfortable conversations about race, because that's where, for me, the learning takes place. One of the most hurtful things I've had to deal with in this last number of years is anytime, whether it's Black History Month or we're talking about the Black Police Association or the Ethnic Minority Police Association, you'll always get somebody, generally anonymously on Twitter or some of the other social media forums, saying, well, what about the White Police Association? Or when are we having White History Month? And people are entitled to their views, but I don't think it should be for the Black people, the Black community, or indeed persons of colour to have to explain why it's important to have a Black Police Association or an Ethnic Minority Police Association. I think if we can create the safe space to have those uncomfortable conversations, I think that would help the learning. I suppose I would start that by saying I'm not what you would call a literary scholar. I'm not particularly well read. But what I would say, I like books by Malcolm Gladwell, not because he writes about Black issues, but he's mixed race, and I happen to be mixed race. Maybe that's my bias. But I like Malcolm Gladwell's books, Outliers, Blink. I would certainly signpost, whether you're Black, whether you're white, or something in between, I would certainly signpost you to Malcolm Gladwell's books. I also think there's another, Mallory Blackman, an author well known for her book, Noughts and Crosses. It's actually interesting that Mallory Blackman writes primarily for young persons, children's books. But Noughts and Crosses is actually very interesting because it tells a story of two different classes of people, but actually it's flipped. Because in Mallory's book, the knots are represented by white people, but they're the underclass, and the crosses are Black people who are the upper class. And it's a very interesting story, and I think it's interesting from a Black person's perspective, because for me it shows that even if Black people hadn't suffered the way they have historically, but the shoe had been the other feet, and white people have suffered, there's no winners. There's no winners. So I think Mallory Blackman, Noughts and Crosses, is definitely worth a read. Not so that you get any self-gratification by being a superior race, but just to highlight that actually we're all equal. There's no winners. One action, I suppose, building on my answer to one of the earlier questions, would be creating that space to have those conversations, creating the space for learning to take place. So rather than the person of colour or the Black person having to challenge the anonymous individual or individuals who ask, well, why isn't there a white police association? Wouldn't it be fabulous if it was the allies that took up that challenge, the white allies, and explained why it's important to have a Black police association, an ethnic minority police association. Same way there's a women's police association, same way there's women's networks, women in business. It's not to say you can't have men in business, but there's a reason why we have these other organizations. So I think creating the space to have what might otherwise have been unsafe conversations, I think, is one action that our allies could take.